Welcome to this special edition of Go Vote Omaha. This is a candidate forum for OPPD Subdivision 1, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Jerry Simon, a League member and the moderator. The League of Women Voters never supports or opposes political parties or candidates. We present this forum solely for voter education. Here's the format for our forum. Each candidate will have a 1-minute opening statement. We'll follow that with questions and answers. The questions have been prepared by the League of Women Voters. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to answer the question. And we'll conclude our forum with 1-minute closing statements by the candidates. A timekeeper will alert the candidates when they have 30 seconds of time remaining and when to stop speaking. Before the forum began, we had the candidates draw lots to determine their initial speaking order, and I will introduce you to them in their order now. We have 3 of the 4 candidates here for the forum. The 4th candidate, Kristine Dungan, was unable to attend. The candidates are, in their first speaking order, Amanda Bogner, Mark Treinen, and Dustin Jennings. And we'll start with opening statements with Amanda Bogner.
All right, thank you very much. Well, first I wanted to thank the Women's League for putting this forum on, and my family for supporting me this evening here in the studio. I am a mother and a wife, and I understand the importance of affordable electricity and the reliability that we need. And as a small business owner and mechanical engineer, I've helped several businesses make smart energy decisions related to energy, and would like to translate that into helping our community become better. Thank you very much. I look forward to the questions.
Thank you. Mark Treinen.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. My name is Mark Treinen. I'm the current incumbent appointed by Governor Ricketts last November. I did this out of a desire to do public service. I am an Omaha native, a graduate of Creighton University, CPA. I had a 38-year business career, very deep in finance and accounting and executive management, strategic planning, budgeting, investment evaluations, and all those things are very long. I have cumulatively over 50 years of board service on private company boards, charity boards, and school boards. So I have a lot of experience. I understand the utility industry at a pretty good depth, and I'd ask you to vote for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dustin Jennings.
My name is Dustin Jennings. I spent some time in the Air Force. I'm currently a contractor at Oppd Air Force Base. From the beginning, our campaign has been focused on 3 core principles, being transparency, fairness, and the future. Recently, the legislature proposed a bill that would allow for unbundled billing, letting the ratepayers see where their money goes for their bills and where their energy comes from. Fairness in trying to reduce or revamp the $200 initial fee to start service in Nebraska, and the future in that I want to work with people like Senator Walz, who introduced a bill to allow for the public power districts to sell municipal broadband. But yeah.
Thank you. All right, our first question. Assess OPPD's cybersecurity. What is being done to protect the OPPD grid from hacking? And we'll begin with Mark.
Well, there is a great consciousness at OPPD on that subject because we've seen some incidents overseas in particular. I'm not really at liberty to talk about anything specific that's being done. I will tell you there are teams working on it daily with good technology and very, very good leadership in that arena. So a lot of that is how you are, or if you are connected to the internet, and how the systems stand on their own. And that's all I really think is appropriate to say about that.
Okay. Dustin.
That's very good. I do have a background in cybersecurity, and I believe Mark is right to say that we don't want to say too much about the security posture that OPPD has for cybersecurity, but I believe my background would help play a role in ensuring that our power grid is protected from cybersecurity attacks.
Okay, thank you. And Amanda?
Well, I think that cybersecurity certainly is an important issue for us to keep in mind as we're making decisions about protecting and ratepayers' information as well as the security of the grid. And so I think that as a board member, I would keep those security issues in mind when making decisions that would potentially affect or as that would come into play.
Okay, thank you. Here's our next question. What is OPPD doing, or what should it do, to ensure that contaminants from coal ash storage in North Omaha and Nebraska City are not leaching into our waterways? And we'll start with Dustin on that one.
I think that's a great question. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing currently, but I would hope they would try to ensure and follow or exceed EPA guidelines on that, because it's very important that we keep coal ash out of our waterways. Yeah, okay, that's all.
Thank you. Amanda?
Well, again, I think going back to the decision making, it's important to keep the environmental aspects in mind as various decisions are made. I think that looking at water quality and taking regular samples is important to ensure that that the measures that have been installed are effective. And in the event that contaminants are found in those water samples, that the board as well as the OPPD staff that are responsible for those measures take appropriate and immediate action.
Thank you. And Mark?
Well, the first thing is there are 5 generation units in North Omaha. Units 1, 2, and 3 were converted from coal to natural gas a few years back, so they've cut down, I'm going to say, the amount of ash by probably 60% by doing that. Secondly, the holding landfills for the ash are all lined. And thirdly, they have a routine program for air testing, soil testing, and groundwater testing, all three. All three are in line with all regulations, and there's a very strong commitment at OPPD to environmental sensitivity. So that's a very active, proactive campaign.
Okay, thank you. Here's our next question. Do you agree with the OPPD plan to begin selling shares of solar power to residential customers and the board's decision not to subsidize solar costs? And we'll start with Amanda.
Yeah, I do agree with the approach. We need to start to look at a variety of clean energy solutions to make sure that we're providing reliable and resilient energy to the grid. And solar is certainly one aspect of that. So I support that.
Thank you. Mark?
I support what they've done. This is our first real toe in the water with solar energy. One thing that concerns me is the land usage. I think this community solar is going to use something like 30 acres of land for the collectors, which is a difficult thing, quite frankly. I strongly believe that the people that desire that clean energy should bear the cost of it, not the entire rate base. I think the ratepayers are free to elect in, but I would not support having everyone bear those extra costs. The proposal, I think, for one share is about a $2 charge per month. So you could, for $10 a month, theoretically have 50% of your energy coming from solar, which I think is a bargain. And not invest much up front. I think there's an upfront deposit that's refundable after a number of years. So it isn't as expensive as hanging collectors on your roof.
Okay. Thank you. Dustin?
I've spoken with a number of people, voters and obviously ratepayers about this. And the general consensus seems to be that people don't want to buy shares of community solar. They want solar. And I understand that it's a hurdle and a significant cost to the public power district because They operate kind of a nonprofit. They don't work for money, they work for the ratepayers. And while I applaud the effort to institute solar in some way, I think that OPPD can do better by straight subsidization of solar, either helping homeowners through purchasing solar panels for their roofs or for their own property. But yeah, sorry. No, I think we could do better with renewable energy in that way than to sell shares of the community solar program.
Okay, thank you. Here's our next question. What do you think is a realistic generation goal for renewable energy in the next 5, 10, and 20 years? OPPD has set a goal of 50% by 2019. And we'll begin with Mark.
Well, I think we've had months recently where 35 to 37% of the retail sales have been renewable. And so I think that the 50% is a pretty good stretch goal. It's very aggressive compared to, for instance, what NPPD is accomplishing. And so I think it's more important, quite frankly, for reliability to have a diverse portfolio of generation assets because I don't think that solar, for instance, is necessarily ready for prime time. You know, you don't get any power half the time. You can see on the meter when a cloud goes over it, it goes from 100% to 20% production very, very quickly. And so you need some fossil fuel backup to make sure that there's enough power on the grid to keep the lights on everywhere. So I think it's laudable. We did remove, by taking out the nuclear plant, one emission-free large generation capacity. So OPPD is in a transition, moving its generation capacity and generation portfolio, and it's going to take a while. I think they're doing it very thoughtfully. For 10 years and 20 years, who knows? Battery technology will come on, and that'll be a game changer, but that's a few years off, I think.
Okay, thank you. Dustin.
Well, I agree with Mark in that we as in OPPD, is in a transition period where they need to focus more on renewable energy and less on fossil fuels. He said 35% is about what they do, but there's no minimum standard. There's no plan to say we are going to meet 35%. We're going to reach 50% by 2019, but there's no minimum standard to say we must reach 50% by 2019. One of the reasons I want to be on the board is because that I want to hold OPPD accountable for how much renewable energy they put out. At any time they can turn around and say, no, we're going straight to fossil fuels now with renewable as a backup. And currently we're on track to not do that, which is very good. But again, I think we should be focusing on minimum standards of renewable energy, minimum amounts of renewable energy. And while increasing that is good, we need to hold the board and the Public Power District accountable for how much they put out.
Thank you. Amanda.
Well, certainly the 50% goal is quite extensive, especially compared to some of our neighboring states and what they're producing. But I think that before we look at a lot more solar than 50%, we need to really help our ratepayers save energy and with energy efficiency measures. I think that is probably more pressing and certainly like the low-hanging fruit. So if we're able to develop energy efficiency programs that both our commercial and our residential ratepayers can take advantage of, we can increase that solar percentage or that clean energy percentage just by reducing the amount of energy that we need to generate. And I think that needs to be something that the board considers, and I would bring the technical background regarding energy efficiency programs to the board for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Here's the next question. How does the new fixed fee schedule really help OPPD when it is promoted as being revenue neutral? Does it make sense to increase costs for low-use, low-income customers, then spend another $700,000 to $800,000 annually in subsidizing those same customers? And we'll start with Dustin.
Thank you. No, I don't think it makes much sense at all. I understand the reasoning behind it, but I don't agree with it. We shouldn't be putting the costs of generating energy on people who can least afford it, and that change primarily affected those that could least afford it. And back to Amanda's answer earlier about reducing energy costs for people, it did very little to help them at all. And time again, I've heard people tell me that that was a step backwards for OPPD. We shouldn't be charging people more for using less. So I wouldn't ever want to raise rates, but I think that was a mistake made by the board at the time.
Thank you. Amanda.
I also oppose the flat rate fee. I think it disproportionately affected people of low income, fixed income, as well as people that have taken a stance to make their homes more energy efficient. They maybe were intentional about what they did to their homes or to their businesses, and had an adverse effect on them when that rate structure was proposed. So, again, I think looking at decision making and how it affects everyone in Omaha, as opposed to maybe a small subset, is the right way to approach any future rate schedule discussions, and really trying to walk through sort of sample bills for a variety of ratepayers and see how it affects their bottom line, because ultimately we need to answer to them. They are our public, and since we're a public utility, we have to answer to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
Well, let me see if I can bring a little clarity. OPPD does have a low-income, low-usage rate that provides credits against those increases that were put into effect. I was not on the board when that was done, but that program's in effect. They do have a conservation effort aimed at reducing 300 megawatts, and some of that's the NEST program and some other programs to lower people's demand. It's kind of an interesting industry where you're trying to convince your customers to use less of what you're selling them, but that's exactly what they're doing. There are quite a few programs out there to help people pay their bills. Something like 20% of bills are in arrears at any one time. And so there's a real concerted effort to get people onto payment plans and to get things like the Common Fund to help people that are poor. In terms of the fixed fee, I think it went from $20 to $25, I believe. I may be wrong about that. I don't have any real heartburn with what the board did on that, even though I wasn't part of it. I think the cost of providing transmission and distribution to all the homes is quite a bit higher than that, quite frankly, on a monthly basis. So I believe it was revenue neutral and that other rates were lowered to get that. We're in I've got the stop sign, so I'll stop.
Thank you. Here's the next question. What is OPPD doing to prepare for accepting power from homes or businesses that have installed power generation equipment, such as solar or wind? For example, there's a car dealership that's recently installed solar panels. Can any excess power be loaded to the grid, and should it be? And we'll start with Amanda.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think that I'm not sure right now if OPPD is accepting power from on-site generation sources like solar or on-site wind, but other utilities that I've worked with in the past have accepted power from those types of on-site generation sources, and they usually do a small rate that they pay the ratepayer back, or a credit to their utility bill. But I do think that when we start to dabble into that, we have to be very cognizant of grid stability. and make sure that the power that's being generated by those on-site generation sources is of high quality. And because if it's not, then we have a potential to have an issue with our grid. The state of California is dealing with that very issue right now as they have a lot of solar and other on-site generation happening throughout the state. And so I think that we can learn from utilities that have already sort of had those hurdles and struggled with those things, and sort of leapfrog over some of the problems that they've had. Thank you. Mark?
I think Amanda had a very good answer. Quite frankly, she hit on the quality of the energy, and one other thing I would add to that is the safety of the OPPD employees, because if you have power coming onto the grid from a number of different sources and they're out working on lines, they have to be able, OPPD has to be able to de-energize lines while there's work being performed. And so I have a real concern about the safety. One of the issues also is that it's very difficult for them to plan for that because the energy is intermittent. Some days the wind blows, some days the sun shines. You don't know what's coming every day. And if we're talking about 1 or 2 installations, I don't think it's a big deal, but when you're talking about hundreds of such installations, I think it becomes a real management problem. And as Amanda said, with the quality of the power and the amount of power, it does challenge grid stability, and nobody wants to see that.
Okay, thank you. And Dustin?
So I'm going to go a little astray from the other 2 answers in that for stability, we need to focus on energy storage on site primarily, or at least at a co-located area where people can generate power and it can be stored there, batteries primarily. And battery technology is rapidly reaching the point where we can do it on a municipal level. But at the same time, the public power districts need to go back to the legislature and say people are allowed to sell more than what they're currently allowed to sell to the public power districts. Right now, a homeowner can install solar panels on their home or a wind turbine in their backyard, and they're only allowed to sell about enough energy back that would power their next door neighbor. Anything more than that, and the public power district would have to cut them off because of state law. So the districts and the boards need to work with the legislature to allow for an expanse of renewable energy being produced by ratepayers and customers. So with your example of the car dealership, once they shut down at 5 or 6 or whatever they shut down at, they're only allowed to sell so much energy back, enough to power one home. And I think we need to work with the legislature to change that.
Okay, thank you. Now our candidates will have closing statements, and we'll begin with Mark Treinen.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. OPPD is a very interesting legal entity. I've come to know the management and the skill of the management. I'm going to, if reelected, represent and protect the ratepayers. That's my #1 priority. Holding down rates, keeping up reliability, and ensuring public and employee safety. Those are the 3 issues that I'm running on, and that's what I'm there for, is to protect the ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Dustin Jennings.
Again, thank you so much for this. I want to take this brief opportunity to thank the League of Women Voters. I use them every election cycle. It's fantastic, and I'm honored to be here right now. Again, I want to focus on transparency, fairness, and the future. We're at the precipice in the internet age in forming a new way of delivering internet to the public. The same way that the public power districts were developed 100 years ago, I think we need to go in that direction with internet service providers. And I think OPPD is uniquely qualified and capable of using their infrastructure to deliver that promise. So, thank you.
Thank you. and Amanda Bogner.
All right, thank you very much. These were excellent questions and very good discussion. Thank you, guys. So I just wanted to, reiterate that, I bring a very unique skill set to this position and can really sort of move us forward in the energy efficiency realm. I have a deep understanding of on-site renewables as well as energy efficiency programs from my work across the country, and I want to translate that into helping the ratepayers keep their rates low. So I ask on May 15th, if you cast your vote, please think of me, Amanda Bogner.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters would like to thank the candidates for being here for this forum. And again, the primary is on May 15th. The League is also doing several other candidate forums that you can watch via a link to our website, omahallwv.org. We have the Douglas County Assessor Register of Deeds Republican primary. We've had State Board of Education District 8. Several of the LD districts we expect to do LD 6, 8, 18, and 20. And we're going to have a forum for Omaha Public Schools Subdistricts 2 and 6. We've also done a forum on the Omaha Public Schools bond issue, a Democratic primary for the 2nd Congressional District, and we're hoping to do one for the U.S. Senate as well. The League's voter guide is available now, the printed version. It is online at omahallwv.org, and we hope to have the hard copy printed versions in all Omaha Public Library branches and at the Douglas County Election Commission's office soon. We also have another online resource as a companion to the voter's guide and to our televised forums, vote411.org. And that is, it gives candidates a little chance to answer a few other questions as well, and you can compare them online. So for the League of Women Voters, I'm Sherry Simon, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues and the candidates, and on May 15th, go vote, Omaha.